crayon. It's basically a lead type pencil or pewter. It would actually write just like our lead pencils of today. And then you had to have another thing to write with. These are quills. In 18th century Europe, they thought swan feathers were the best, but we didn't have we didn't have swans here in the southern colonies. What we did have was domestic birds like geese and turkey. These are made from wing feathers of a turkey or a goose.
So Dr. Dunaway is
It's a process to cure this. If you ever picked up a feather, it's very pliable. It has to cure. It takes heat to cure it. A lot of times they do it in the sun in a window.
How long does that take?
It can take a couple of months just to cure naturally, or you could do what's called an immersion technique, where you would immerse it into hot sand, let it sit for a minute or two, take it back out and cool. It's called tempering. Over time, it starts to turn opaque, and then what you have to do is you have to start to prepare it. You scrape off the outside membrane, and then you have what's called a quill knife, and you make a slit here and a slit there, and you take a small little metal object and you clean out the membrane inside. That allows, or if any ink got in contact with it, it would impede the ink flow. So you want to make sure all that's away from it. And then you take the fine point of that penknife and you cut it into a small cutting surface, and you make a split down the middle. And you see a little opening right there. You can see how it's split. This is comparable to the 18th century, 1800s type of writing implement. It had a metal nib. They're made the same way. If you see they're shaped this very same way. They have a little split down the middle to work as a reservoir. But they were very well made. They lasted well. The difference is you have to use a fine touch when you're writing. If you veer down too hard, it will damage the quill, and then you have to re-sharp everything and start over. So that's two items that you needed. The third is the ink. And in the 18th century, there were a couple of sources for ink. You had what's called India ink. This is basically carbon filter, dust, lamp black. It's been used for centuries. Makes a good ink. You add a little water and a binder to it. It absorbs well to the paper. Historic documents were written with this, dating back to historic times prior to the Revolutionary War for centuries. In the 18th century, they also used another product called iron gall ink, and it was a process where they would take ferrous sulfate, which is basically rust particles. They would put it into a vat, and then they would add to it tannic acid. The source would be from a oak gall. And so they would find these. An oak gall, if you don't know, it's a nest that the gall wasp lays all of its eggs into. When they hatch out, they fly out through this little hole. You can harvest these in late summer, early fall. You basically just crush this into a fine powder. You mix it with that tannic acid, the ferrous sulfate, and add a binder to it, and it makes a very good ink. But over time, they found out one problem. You know what ferrous sulfate is? It's rust particles. So what does rust tend to do to things? Eats holes in them. So they would look at documents and they'd start seeing holes in them. And so they realized, well, that's not a long-standing way to
In the paper?
In the paper, yes, sir. So they came up with another way that they could make it without the use of that. And that's what I'm using here today. Is called walnut hull ink. And it is made from the husk of a walnut. If you ever picked up a walnut that's fallen off a tree in the late fall, they're mushy and they are filled with tannic acid. If you mess with it too much, it gets on your hands, it turns them brown. But you put this in a pot, you boil it down, it makes a great dye for dyeing clothes naturally. The longer you leave it in the dye, the darker it gets. But they also found if you thin this down enough, add a little bit of binder to it, it would actually make a very good ink as well. I like it because it has a brown tint to it. It has more of an aged look to it, and it gives what you're writing a little bit different feel and touch to it. So let's see. I'm going to see which of these quills works today. Let's see what we can do.
How long will one feather last?
Depending on how hard you bear down, it can last a couple months. These are about 6 months old, and they're starting to show where, when you bear down, if you start to bear down too hard, like this, if you bear down too hard, it starts to curl into the nib up, and it gives it a blunt surface, so then it doesn't write as well. But it just takes a very light touch. It's just, let's see, that is not, there we go. Let's use this.
Ooh, look at this fancy writer.
This is about as much ink as you use. Where with your modern day ballpoint pens, inks, you have a roller ball, you have a long reservoir of ink, but really this is about as much ink as you'd have. Depending on how long a word, how thick your ink is, a lot of different conditions impact how many words you can write. But like, you just take a very light touch, you kind of go at an angle. Now I got to thin my ink down, it's a little too thick today.
So, are you wanting your ink to be like the same consistency as like the dip ink that we would use today?
It's a little thinner, it is a little thinner, and I'm going to add a little bit of water to this, and just a little bit. So,